When I sat down with Susanna Barr, I expected to talk pickleball strategy. What I didn't expect was a full masterclass in what it takes to build a career in the sport, on and off the court. Susanna isn't just a pro pickleball player. She's a facility owner, a coach, a creator, a brand builder, and a walking example of what most people don't see. The mental, emotional, and entrepreneurial layers behind success in pickleball. In this episode, she breaks down the reality of being self-funded, the power of showing up with intention, and how footwork, mindset, and community all tie together. Yes, that's actually true. If you're chasing your next big breakthrough in pickleball or anything else, this one is absolutely for you. I walked away with more than just, honestly, a couple takeaways. I walked away with a high conviction in myself and in what I'm doing. That's really the key piece of what makes Susanna just so inspirational. And I know you guys are going to get the same amount of value out of it. This conversation was absolutely awesome, and I'm going to let you dive into the episode. Go enjoy. What is your greatest failure?
Oh boy. Not just in pickleball.
It could be pickleball related. It could be also business related, or even
Okay.
personal related if you want it to be.
Okay.
That's up to you.
Oh, goodness. I,
What pops in the brain? What's the first thing that pops in the
yeah, I
brain?
mean, I guess I'm thinking like my greatest failure is probably not taking the time or the understanding of what it takes to truly be successful in the
Okay.
pickleball sphere early enough. Like I let it go for so long, um, without
Break that
really.
down for us a little bit.
I mean, I'm just thinking like when I started out, right? And I started out at a time when it was probably a good time to get into pickleball, and there were a lot of opportunities, and and I really kind of got into it just thinking about playing only,
Mm,
right? And I didn't understand or embrace or learn all the nuances that go into truly being successful in the sport in more than just on the court. So as far as a failure goes, like I feel like I missed a lot of time and a lot of opportunities that could have progressed my career even further, or set me up better so that at this stage I wouldn't have to be grinding as hard as I still am.
didn't you start your career though a little bit later in the pickleball space? Is that correct? What was the
Um,
year?
no, I mean I started playing in 2018,
Okay.
but I went pro. I started playing more pro stuff, and uh, probably right towards the end of 2020 or right before COVID, and then I didn't go full time pro until like 3.5 years ago. So, but it wasn't even just that. I mean, I was coaching. I was definitely in that sphere,
Yeah.
but I just didn't really, I didn't. Yeah, I mean that's it, and it's just it was like it's a failure that I didn't understand how important other aspects of of pickleball there are, like all the different areas in which like to build your brand, and understanding sponsorships and businesses, and all of that part, right? Like I just focused on playing, which was fun, but um
So I was
yeah.
just gonna ask you that is like, what were the learnings? And it sounds like there was a couple that you already mentioned out of that failure that you've really taken to today. Because I would say from Susanna Barr in 2018 till now, there is a
Mhm.
lot that you have done, right? So what
Right.
were some of the things that you've
Yeah,
learned?
absolutely. And I think about like when I talk to new players kind of coming into the sphere now, and the advice I give them is very different than what I would have given myself back in
Oh,
2018. Right. So,
interesting.
so definitely a bigger focus on um, building your brand, on the social media side of things, on finding a support system, um, taking, how are you using your time and your resources to, up your game and up your marketability, and are you paying for uh, sports performance coaches? Are you, do you have a coach you're working with? Do you, um, do you take all of that part as seriously as going out and just playing with your friends? And um, so,
So as
I
a
think there's just so much more involved in it
yeah,
than, and there is more involved in it now than when I started, anyways, right? But like you know, I didn't know any of that coming into this. And so when I came into it, it was like, okay, how good can you hit the ball? Right.
yeah.
And okay, like that was the extent of it to some degree, right? But now I think players coming into the sport, they got to look at a much bigger picture, um, in order
So
to have
in
the
28 so in 2018, sorry to cut you off there, but
opportunity.
I was thinking about this. So in 2018, what was originally your intention with starting to play pickleball at the highest level? Were you doing something else at the time and you were like, you know what? I went out, I enjoyed this, I played with the family and let me see what I could do with it? Or like
Yeah,
what was the actual landscape then?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't get, serious into it into more like 2020, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't even necessarily count those first couple of years because it was more of a hobby at that stage, right? It was something I was doing for fun. I did have other work that I was doing at the time, and but once I started traveling and finding success at the pro level, um, I, and again, I don't know. I don't know if it's a failure as much as like it would have been nice to have had a mentor during that time period, right, to help me understand the landscape, and like, because I always felt like I'm trying to play. I'm going to tournaments. I've got good partners. I'm getting results, but I'm like literally at home grinding away to pay for all this,
Yeah.
right? And not really understanding, um, how to make that happen without having to work quite so hard.
Yeah.
Right. And even just, understanding like, um, even just the sports side of it, right? Like, um, which I think, players do better now, like some of them, but I have other, up and coming pro players that, they're not in the gym. They don't have a schedule. They don't have anybody, kind of guiding their training. And so even there, it's still a little bit of the wild, wild west, as far as I would say, for quite a few of the players out there. And then there's other players that do have those resources and have built that team around them, and just kind of understanding like where should we be putting our energy and our resources, um, and then looking long term, right? Like I think a
Mm.
lot of players are not looking past the next tournament to what's going to happen in 10 years, what's going to happen in 15 or 20 years. And so, I think that's kind of, and I'm in the same boat, right? Like once I really started playing, like I said, it was like, okay, like kind of like, how do I pay for the next tournament? How do I get there?
Yeah.
How do I find a host house, so I can save money or whatever the case might be? Um, and not really understanding that other side of like, okay, you need a brand, you need to you need people to know who you are, you need to be able to find sponsors, you need to figure out, build on your strengths so that if you're teaching a clinic, you're going to get people actually signing up for it, or whatever that case might be. Yeah, so I guess it's kind of a pickleball failure, but it's also kind of a a bigger failure as well, in the sense that I'm at the stage I'm at, and I still feel like I'm having to grind pretty hard. But some of that's just my personality. So let's be honest there too. Like, you know, you might take away
And
pickleball, and I'm still gonna be like, what's my next project?
we are going to get into some of those projects. Don't you worry. Um, But what I wanted to kind of chime in on, because I'm thinking about in our audience, some of the pros that listen, some of the up and coming pros that
Hmm.
listen, like that is a lot to digest, right? They're listening to this right now and they're like, holy crap, that is a lot that I have to go and do, right? But
Right.
what's the foundation that they can start on if they're an up and coming pro or even a highly competitive amateur? You're considering taking the leap or trying. Like, what's the
Right.
foundation they start on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the foundation is probably trying to find a mentor,
Okay.
somebody who can, who's been through this, who can take the time to, help them look at, what's the right path. Which tour do I want to play, or do I want to play all of them, or do I want to focus on regional money balls? Like, how am I going to, get my name out there, get the experience that I need? How do I start to find sponsors? Like, you get the pros that will sign the very first sponsorship deal that they get offered for barely anything, right? Maybe some free paddles, and then they're stuck with that. Whereas, like, okay, if you wait a little longer and you really, work on your social media side of things, or getting better known, you might get a better sponsorship deal if you had
Mhm.
just waited, right? And so, kind of finding that balance there of, how do we maneuver? It's easy enough to sign up for a tournament, but how do we maneuver the rest of it to, make it an actual career, right? There's a difference between I can go to a tournament and play versus, this is actually my career and I can survive off of this. And um, yeah, so I think find if you can find somebody who can help you, uh, advise you well in that path.
Because it sounds like realistically, it always comes down to the question of how is this all getting paid for? Where is the money coming from?
For sure.
Right. And especially the up and coming players that are in that possibly not going to college and pursuing this career or moving out after college, they don't already have a career or a savings to kind of sit off and kind of do this for a couple of years. Is that kind of
Right.
where that's coming from? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and some of them are fine because they have family
Yeah.
support or whatever. But I think maybe more looking at the ones that have the skills, but they don't have that support necessarily. They have the desire, they have the will. But even for the ones that have some family support, that only goes so far before it's like, how are you going to start to support this yourself?
Mm.
Um, and so, and it's not even just, it is the money side, but it's also just like, the importance of people knowing who you are in the sport, right? Which is probably the biggest thing that I never really got when I first came into it, and that wasn't really my personality.
Yeah.
um to be like, it is important that when you're at a tournament that people know who you are, that they want to come up and talk to you, that they want to interact with you, that they follow you on social media or whatever. And it's important for a couple of things, right? It's important for, potentially getting better sponsorships,
Hmm.
right? It's important for work opportunities. And it's just also important for the sport, right? It's also important for your enjoyment of the sport as well. Like, um, it's, we do it because we love the sport, but we also, you know, we also are doing it because we want people to watch us play,
Yeah.
right? To some degree, like, you want fans, you want support behind you. And it's so much better to go to a tournament where you have people supporting you and they're in the crowd cheering for you than people who are like, I don't know who that is, right? So I think, that side of it sometimes gets neglected.
I,
Um,
uh, I think in so many entrepreneurs as a whole, I think that's often the leverage is that you are developing a personal brand along the way,
mhm.
and that's something that can't necessarily be like taken from you. So for example, the way that I think about it and the way that I think you're getting at too is, let's say you're playing on one of the tours and you have a serious injury, but you've
Right.
built this personal brand along the way, this huge audience that already follows you, this huge community that is already associated with you, loves what you're doing.
Mhm.
there's a whole life for you after that, right?
Right.
And a lot of
Yep.
what we talk about is like the career that you have as an athlete after your athletic career is actually over, after that first
Right.
death that a lot of people talk about, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you emphasize the point of personal brands because it's not only marketable for you as an athlete while you're playing, but also afterwards. You're setting yourself up for the rest of your life when that career is actually over.
Right. And I mean, it can be, it can be a little bit lonely on tour or being an athlete or out there, you know, trying to get better, trying to win matches, and to have, to feel like you have a community behind you supporting you,
Hmm.
goes a really long ways. And, so I think that's something that a lot of people overlook, and probably I overlooked a little bit at the beginning. Um, because again, I came into this completely not as an athlete, right? I was an athlete, but not as as a pro athlete or anything like that. And so those were things I didn't really understand. Um, and so that was probably, again, I feel like a failure for me going into it of, yeah, if I had taken the time to find a coach
Yeah.
to help me plan my, luckily I think I'm a coach myself, and I was mature enough and hardworking enough to be like, okay, I can set my schedule, right? But I see a lot of the younger pros who really don't know how to practice, right? What to practice, what to work on, like how
Hmm.
many hours should I be spending, right? And so to have somebody even on that side, like set up a training plan. I mean, you think about other sports, and it's pickleball is unique in that sense, right? Whereas where other sports, you have coaches your whole life, right? Telling you what to do and what to work on, um, and in pickleball, that's just kind of a new thing that's just starting to develop at this stage. So people are kind of, you know, fish out of water, is just trying to figure out, what do I need to do?
So I that's where I think we're gonna end up going with this conversation is we kind of gave the foundation of where to start. And then we're going to get to, it seems like, actually being at the top and competing at the top as a high level pro, like
Hmm.
what it takes to be there as well. So the question that I want to ask that you kind of just dove into is like, is there a right way to practice, a right way to drill, or is there a lot of variance in it? Like, what is the right way to practice?
Yeah, I mean, as with most things, right? There's some variance because you're going to have your natural skill set to begin with, right? But I mean, it's like any other sport. The more time you put into it, and the more um, like disciplined time, the better results you're going to have, right? If you just go out to court and you're hitting with your buddies, right, you're going to have fun. You're going to have some good points. You're going to work on some things. But if you're not actually sure what I should be working on, like what skill is it that I'm missing? And how do I incorporate this into a match? It's going to be hard to develop it, right? It might develop over time, but I definitely think that to be a high level pickleball player, there is some right ways to go about it.
Hmm.
And it just includes your off court fitness and time, right? It includes, what are you doing when you are on court? How much are you drilling versus how much are you playing? Who are you drilling with? Who's there to help you? Because I see it even with my lower level players, right, that I coach. Like they're like, I'm out there drilling, but I don't know if I'm even doing it the right way,
Hmm.
right? And so, you can develop some really bad habits by hitting 1,000 balls the wrong way, right? So if you don't have anybody who's kind of guiding, and how much time is too much time, right? Um, and even when you're out there practicing, matches, I think there's some right ways to do that as well, right? So when I go to play
Interesting.
a match, do I have a goal that I'm working on, right? And it could be anything. Like it can be a technical goal, it can be a mental goal that I'm trying to work on in that match, right? And I play different people for different reasons. I'm very particular with how I spend my time, and I only have limited amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So, if I'm going to go play somebody because I want to work on my mental game, I might pick that person who bugs me. right? I mean, to be honest, right? Like
Yeah,
to be
I love
challenging.
that
It was
strategy. Yeah.
my mental game and my focus and my positivity. Um, if I'm going to go work on, playing an aggressive game, I'm going to pick that person I know is going to attack all the balls, right? So, to have some sort of focus before you get out on court is going to be, really useful to taking your game to a higher level. And then when you're playing in those matches and you face those situations, you've already seen it all, right? So you're more prepared. Um, but there's even things that I didn't really know at the beginning, until I did finally hire a sports performance coach, of like, even how do we warm up appropriately before a match, and how do
What
we,
does that look like?
right, and how do we spend time in between matches during a long tournament day. And again, it might be a little different for everyone, but like, I was given a bunch of exercises just with bands that I can carry in my pickleball bag, right, that I can hook up to activate different muscles, like that specific,
So
that I would never think about. Like, oh, I should be activating, you know, like, okay, obvious ones like your glutes rather
yeah.
than your thighs, right? Like, okay, I don't know that. Um, if I just go out and play, I'm probably going to be using more of my leg muscles, which might lead to greater injuries and exhaustion than if I actually activate my bigger muscles that can probably do more, right? So, like,
Yo,
things like that.
you're hitting so many things on the head right now that are just amazing. I can't wait for everybody to listen to that back. And they're probably like myself, they're probably thinking like, okay, like notebook out. What the hell am I doing and writing down? What is Susanna doing? So with the actual, we'll key on the warm up first. You talked
Hmm.
about glute activation. This
Hmm.
is something that I noticed it myself talking with one of my coaches as well. Is it's like, especially if I'm looking to be in that athletic stance and I'm not
Hmm.
hinged over, right? I'm trying to
Right.
really hinge at my hips.
Right.
I've noticed from film, I have so many more misses throughout a game if I am
Right.
not warming up my hips, my glutes. Even
Yep.
I'll tell you, even like for me, like my big thing is like I call them my bunnies, my feet, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Getting the feet going, the quick twitch muscles going a little bit, so you're not
Yep.
so flat footed on your heels.
Yep.
Huge thing for me as well to be engaged. So, what does the Susanna Barr warm up routine look like for a match?
Yeah, I mean, so definitely gonna start with, um, just using bands, right,
Mm,
to warm up shoulders, core, and legs. Okay, so kind of using those bands to kind of get everything activated correctly, and then doing some dynamic warm ups. The shuffle steps and back and forth, on the court, suicide type things. Definitely want to get my heart rate up, and then, you know, once I feel like everything's kind of working right, then it's going to be, a pretty heavy duty on court dinking, third shots, all of that, and then finish up with getting the competitive mindset going. So definitely wanting to play out some points or some skinny singles or whatever it is, to get you into that competitive mindset at the very end where you're like, now I want to
mm.
win. Um,
Uh, I think that competitive mindset component is so critical, um, and I want to get into that in a little bit. But
mhm,
I wanted to comment on before we get there, because we're about to, is you talked about with drilling to be efficient, you're like
mhm,
selecting players to almost play with depending on what you're working on that day.
right.
Have you found that to be like your super efficient way to work on a specific skill? So like if you know somebody is an incredible dinker, like they
Yes.
could dink all day long,
Yes.
you're saying, "Hey, do you want to go drill today?" And we're just going to
Yes.
dink for the hour 90 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if I'm going to go drill with somebody who I know I can beat in the dink rally every time,
Yeah.
then you know, I'm not getting challenged and pushed,
Yeah.
right, for that. Now maybe there's something else they can push me on, and that's not to say there's sometimes where it's like, no, because that is my challenge, is to stay in that winning mindset the whole time,
Mm,
right? So sometimes, like, if somebody asks me to drill and I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go do it, I know I can outdink them, then my goal is for that entire hour I'm going to outdink them. I'm not going to let it slip up and get lazy. right?
Yeah.
So because that's a challenge in itself to keep that focus.
So how many
But
intentions are you walking out there with in that session? Is it one intention, two?
I would
You're
say
setting
two to
those before you
three,
go?
two to
Two to
three.
three?
Yeah. And then it might alter throughout, as things come up that we're like, oh, we should work on this. Like I'm struggling with this, or, this was a good drill. We should do this again. Right. Um, so definitely like a constant reevaluation throughout the drill session. So if we're doing a dinking rally and, maybe I'm getting caught on their speed ups.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, now I'm going to reevaluate and be like, okay, this is my goal now is I'm not going to get caught anymore. Like I'm going to be ready for any speed up. Um, so there's a constant evaluation that's happening. Um, but yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, I've got and I appreciate all my practice partners, and um, I've got practice partners who were like college volleyball players who get every single ball back. Right, their defense is insane, and so it's like, okay, so that's my goal with them is to be able to outmove them and out, get past their defense.
Yeah.
Then I've got, the tennis players that can drive the heck out of the ball,
We
right?
we all know we all know the tennis players.
And so, my intentions with them is to handle the fast game,
Yeah.
right? Or to find my target areas because I know their hands are really good. Um, I got the 6'8" college basketball player. My goal is to get the ball to bounce on him,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes that's my goal. Like if I can get the ball to bounce on the 6'8" guy, that's pretty good. Um,
Not a lot of room to get that ball to bounce.
exactly. So, so yes. So I would say I am pretty deliberate and and then I also have the ones where it's like I just need to relax and love this sport again. So I'm gonna get my friends that make me laugh.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Kind of getting into the mental half because I know that
Hmm.
we kind of teased it a little bit, and I feel like we could talk about like drilling strategies all day long, right? But
Right.
ultimately, that and the mental side of the game never end, right? It's a
Right.
constant learning battle out there.
Yes. Yes.
Something that we do emphasize heavily on this podcast, and I really want to know if you agree with it or not, is just like having that piece of you that's just like, who do I want to show up as on the court today?
Yes.
Right? So the question that I have for you is like, who does Susanna Barr want to show up as every time they step on the court?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I absolutely agree it's really important. And I'd say I have two, right?
Yeah.
So one of them is probably my dream person of,
Okay.
this badass that nothing bothers them and they get every ball and they're like probably more aggressive than defensive, right? So that's like, and they're moving and they've got some swag that I don't really have. So that's like my dream person. Um, and then my
I love
my real person is I want to set a good example and I want to be having fun, or at least uh, people to think I'm having fun, because I do know I have people watching me who look up to me or who I represent in my community and things like that. And so it is also important for me, that I keep that persona as well.
it. Yeah.
And to be fair, I mean that is who I am. I'm not faking that. But there's times you get frustrated and things like that, and I try to keep that in mind that that part of who I am and part of what I value is being a good partner, being a good sportsman, um, and and so that's also and just sharing in some ways as the instructor, it's like sharing that reality that we can make mistakes and not let it drag us down, right? So,
Yeah. I completely agree. Right. The what I wanted to kind of give evidence to in saying that is was there any, like, I'll say, favorite wins or even notable losses or rivalries when you feel like that mentality, that person who you want to show up as was just really, really challenged?
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say like right now is like, I mean, obviously like Jill Braverman and Megan Fudge are the number one, women's team on the APP tour. And
Yeah.
so, kudos to them, and they're great people. And Um, and we all, say hi and text off court and stuff like that. But definitely, like, they're who you want to beat right now,
Yep.
right? And so there is some. Um, they definitely challenge that in the sense that there's more pressure, right?
Yeah.
Like, and maybe I put pressure on myself, and I feel like, you know, uh, like fans and crowds put pressure on that because they want to see you succeed against the number one team, right? And so um, I would say like being on court with them sometimes can be a challenge, right? So if you talk about, I don't know if it's really a rivalry or not, but we've gone back and forth,
Yeah.
right? When we get to championship Sundays, they've won some and I've won some, and so it's hard to, yeah, I mean, you want, like all of us, like we want that win,
Yeah.
right? We wouldn't be doing it if we weren't competitive. Um, and,
Yeah.
and and I think it's also like probably my one, I bit of pride thing too of like, okay, yes, I can still beat them, right? So
Yeah.
um, so I'd say with that, um, when you want something hard, badly enough, it can sometimes backfire. So you have to also be realistic, and the times that the matches that I've really loved and have felt good about, um, win or lose, were the ones where it was like I was playing, with that swagger and that movement, right, and um, that ability to, if you make an error or whatever, you're just on to that next point. And um, yeah, so definitely, like, even for me, when I look at the matches that I'm proudest of, they weren't always ones I've won, but they were ones that, I was proud of how I played
Yeah.
and how I felt as I played. Um, and then the ones I'm least proud of are definitely the ones where I felt like external factors distracted me, right? Be it opponents, be it, you know, crowds, be it weather, be it whatever it might be, right? Um, and I think that's just kind of a mindset challenge for the majority of players at all levels, of being able to not let distractions affect your mental game, because that's the
Mm.
reality. Like, when we fail on the mental side, it's typically because we've allowed distractions to become more center in our thoughts.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like when I fail in that area, like, those are the ones I'm most disappointed in myself, right? So
Yeah.
even if I was to lose to an annoying team, if I maintained, not letting it bother me and distract me, right, I'm going to be like, okay, well, at least that's a success, right?
Yeah.
But if I let it get under my skin, you know, then I'm like, oh, like, I know my mental game failed.
I think the key in there that I'm so curious about, and I'm sure everybody listening is just as curious, is we all experience, no matter what level you're at, some sort of, I'll say, distracted away from that mindset that you want to be in or that person that you want to be on the court.
Hmm.
And the critical component is like, how do you check yourself back in? How do you reset after
Right,
that first miss or after two, three misses in a row? And rather than it smacking you in the
right.
chest or your heart's beating out of your chest, you're like, oh no, here it goes.
Yeah.
How do you actually reset yourself to step back in the game and then check yourself back into that mindset and that person who you want to be on the court?
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies a little bit for each person, and sometimes you have to go into a match willing to try some different techniques
Mm,
until you can kind of see
okay.
like what works for you. So
Like
I think,
trial and error a little bit
yeah, a little bit,
when you
right?
first
I think
start.
for
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important for you to have some ideas though ahead of time, right? And I know a lot of people talk about the, you know, turn around and focus on something small on the fence or on your paddle, do some breathing, like things like that, right? Um, that can help you, kind of reset in those moments. Um, I think for myself, It's really useful if I have a partner that I can kind of lean on.
Okay.
So I definitely, find that if I can turn and connect with my partner, that helps me focus more on that and us as a team rather than the distractions.
Is that
Um,
verbal? Is that physical?
both,
Both?
both. Yeah, definitely. Um, and then I also, taking those timeouts. Anybody who knows me knows I'm like a nervous eater. So, I take those timeouts and I eat whatever snack I have. That sometimes helps. I just say, okay, see some food, get some energy. so, um, and then, I don't know. I mean, I guess if we're just all being honest, like the one I found recently is sometimes like I just have to let it out. Like if like sometimes I have to
Just to
find
yell or
something.
scream?
No, it's like more like I find something that might not even be the actual thing, but if it's like something safe that I can like let my frustration out on, and then I can go
Yeah.
back and I'm like, okay, I'm good, right? That might
Yeah.
not be fair to specifically like, you know, if it's a person or a friend or something in the crowd, and I'm just like, ah, but it seems to work. Like, yeah, that seems to have worked. That's kind of a sad one. I gotta think about that one a little more. But because you can't, when you're distracted, you can't usually handle the thing that's actually distracting you
Yeah.
because it's usually something you don't have any control over, right? If you had control over it, it probably wouldn't be distracting you.
Yeah.
So it's like if I can find something I do have control over, then that sometimes takes care of that frustration. And then I'm like, okay, there was something I could control. Now I can go back out and play my match.
Do you use I'm asking you this cuz I do it personally. Do you use any like silly mantras or things that you reiterate to yourself throughout the match to remind you of that mindset? And what are those things that you might say?
Yeah, so probably the biggest one I have was from my son when he was, it was early on. It was probably a couple of years into pickleball, so he was probably 12.
Okay.
um, and we loved the movie Cool Runnings,
Okay.
and so I remember, so we're at
Bobsled movie?
what's that?
Is that the movie about the bobsled team?
The bobsled team from Jamaica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're at this tournament, and it's a tight match, and like I call a timeout, and he comes over to me, and he's just like, he's like, "You a badass mother. You don't take no crap from nobody, right?" And it's like this line from this movie, and I'm just like, I'm like dying. It made me laugh, and I'm like, you know what? It's a great line, right?
I love that.
It's a perfect line. So like that line comes in my head. You're a badass mother. You don't take no crap from nobody. All right, complete opposite of me. But I'm like on the court. There we go. And then the other one is like, so then from that same movie, then like with my partner Brandon Lane, who's like all, he's from Belize. He's all Rastafarian. So he loves
Yeah.
it, right? It's perfect for him. So he'll always be like, find the rhythm, find the rhyme. So he'll like say that when we're on the court together. He'll be like, cool runnings, because that's kind of from the movie too. They're like, find the rhythm. So we're always kind of, so that's probably my um silliest sayings in my head.
I I love that because it gives you like realistically, if you're talking about the how it helps manner, is it not only gives you the let me go out there and kick some ass bluntly, but it
Right.
also just it checks you into reality a little bit, gives you the
Yes.
giggle,
Yeah.
allows you to be more present. So it's kind of twofold rather than having two
Yeah.
separate things. It's like one thing does the same thing for you. So I
Absolutely.
absolutely love that.
And I think for my game, I play best when I do kind of find a rhythm, right?
Mm,
And it's like almost like Dominic Catalano, who also like coaches me, like he'll always say it. He'll be like, I can tell when you're playing well because it's like you're almost jumping into your shots. You're almost bouncing on that court, right? And it's
mm,
like you talked about the footwork, right? And not being lazy and not being, you know, and you're almost like getting to that ball before it even gets there, right? And so and I can feel it, right? Like I'm more aware when I am more aware of when I'm actually doing it than when I'm not, which is one of those things you talk about, the mental things that we're always thinking about and trying to work on. So for me, I'm trying to work on recognizing when I'm not in that state so that I
Mm.
can put myself back in it. But when I'm in it, I know, because it's just like, yeah, like I'm like I wrote one of my blog posts was all about Tigger, right? And being, you know, being like Tigger out there and just bouncing around and having fun and getting to those balls. And so it is like I play my best when I am in that kind of bouncy rhythm. And so, you know, so it actually even makes sense in that sense, right? Of like find the rhythm, right? And so, you know, so yeah, it's multiple levels.
It's it's so cool that you said that because I was watching a clip from the Masters
Hmm.
and people were asking Rory McIlroy about just how after these 11 years of chasing this, he was able to stay so calm, cool, and collected, even going into a playoff, missing the last putt, dropped him a shot, now going into a one-hole playoff against Justin Rose. And the frame that he gave was that no doubt was his heart pounding out of his chest. No doubt, right, was he nervous in those shots. Not only did he play one shot at a time, but he talked about chasing a feeling on the golf course
Hmm.
rather than actually chasing results, right? Or wins. It's like, how do I want to feel when I'm actually out there? It seems like you take that a similar approach in that manner of like, how do I want to feel when I'm on the court and how can I replicate that as much as possible? Is that accurate?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Like it is, and it's the same thing I was saying. You know, I can lose a match, but if I had that feeling,
Yeah.
I'm more okay with losing it. But honestly, when I do find that feeling, I don't lose that many matches,
Yeah.
right? So it's you know, it's huge of you know, understanding where when you're, I mean, you know, what we call it in the zone, right? In a way, but also understanding what your zone feels like, and it's not always the same for everybody.
And it sounds like everything that we've been talking about leading up to this is what are the habits that I can build to consistently help me get to that zone more
Mhm.
often and possibly more efficiently.
Absolutely. Yep.
I got a question for you here because you brought up your son a little bit.
Mhm.
Have you and your son played pickleball together?
We have.
The reason I asked that is because I may have read a couple articles that said it may have been a little chaotic at times,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
Talk to me about not only the fun of actually playing with your son, but also the fact of like why, whether it is a mother and a son, or it is siblings, or it is a father and a daughter, why that dynamic sometimes is like challenging to navigate, but also can be a superpower in certain manners.
Right. I mean, I think also you could talk about, you could throw couples in there as well, right?
Yes,
Like
definitely.
any, you know, so yeah, you know, my son and I started on this first on the same day. We went to the YMCA together, and played on the, you know, the same day. And and so, you know, we've played a few tournaments together, some local things. We did play a couple of pro events together as well. Um, and you know, it's something that I think we'll always look back on and be like, "That's pretty cool that we got to do that together." But it definitely was not always easy. Certain ones were easier than others, and you know, it's a tough dynamic. And obviously, just different, you know, personalities are always going to come into play with that. Um, but I think as a parent, right, I felt it was hard for me to be the player on the court and not be the parent,
Mm,
right? So, you know, so if there was, you know, if I felt like my son Porter was feeling pressure or he was upset because he missed a shot, like whereas with a normal partner, I'd just be like, hey, you know, whatever, let's go. Right. But like with him, I'm like, it's okay, you're fine, like have fun, right? Like it was this, the parent side came out
yeah.
way too easily of being more concerned about, you know, if he's enjoying himself, if he's having fun, if he's, you know, not, you know, I didn't want him feeling that kind of pressure. Right. And then I think as the son, I think it's obviously, I think it's just different because I was already, getting well known and having results. And so he was allowing himself to feel, way too much pressure. Right.
Yeah.
And wanting to honestly like impress me.
Yeah.
Right. He wanted to be able to prove to mom that he was good enough to do this. And where, and that's just, I think we have those thoughts a lot of times with different people, right? Where instead of just going out and being able to just play,
Mm.
right? Again, it's those distractions, right? That we're more concerned about, you know, what do we look like, or what do people think about us, or, and so, I think we see it with couples too, right? Where, they're they're more embarrassed for a mistake in front of their spouse than they are if it was just a partner, right? To some degree, because they care more, right? There are bigger feelings, and you got to go home with them. And um,
Oh, I
so,
agree.
it's definitely not easy. And I admire the people that can do it. And, we've got a couple here in Boise have been playing forever. And I always said they did it best because they were just so mean to each other on the court the whole time, but like in a joking way, right? It was just
Yeah.
like the one made an error and they'd be like, "You suck. Can you not do better?" Right? But it was just like, and so, they just kind of kept it that way of like we're just going to go at it and have fun, and rather than allowing any kind of like pressure, because that's
Yeah.
really what it is. I think pressure is what can hurt those circumstances, and we just read more, right? Like we read more into those relationships. And so if my son's like upset because he missed a ball, I'm reading more into that as mom than I would if it was just some player, like some other partner, right? Because I'm reading more on of an emotional side than just, oh, they're upset they missed a ball, right? So to be able
I
to kind of
relate.
be like, let that go.
The reason I relate so heavily and I asked that question is because I know it's just not me and my girlfriend that have had to overly communicate about that situation, because we've talked to other couples about it, and also some siblings about it. And I'm so happy that you said that, because the big emphasis that we recognize, to relate to anybody listening, is like, by you drilling with your partner, you kind of know like the shots that they may be a little insecure about or find as their own weaknesses, right?
Right.
So when you go and play and they miss that shot, you know the feeling that they're going through, rather than if you're playing with your partner, maybe you know their weaknesses, but you don't know the feeling that they have right after that miss. They're
Right.
walking back. You're saying, let's go to the next point. And that response, you're like, do I tell her it's okay? Do I not tell her it's okay?
Right.
Like, what's the dynamic that we want to work through? Because you just feel it at a whole nother level. So we
Yes.
totally had to over communicate, and that's worked for us. We've
Hmm.
even established a little bit of a system of like, hey, do you want me to say something right now or not? Um,
Right.
but in that manner, it's definitely, definitely challenging. However, I'll send the other half that you were getting at is, if you can figure out that recipe,
Hmm.
it's it is totally a superpower in the manner that you also know each other and how they're feeling so well. If it's on the winning side of the ball, it's at a whole nother level. Like your energies are
Hmm.
bouncing off of each other
Yeah,
very, very
absolutely.
well in that manner.
It can be so rewarding for you and
Yeah.
for your relationship too, right? I mean, I think relationships are more successful when you are building something together,
Yeah.
right? And so if you
I agree.
can, take it to the small level of playing pickleball together, right? That's something you can do together, that you're building. That's not just, going and eating dinner at a restaurant or whatever. Like you're actually working on something together. And, so I think that, that's so important to building strong relationships and strong bonds. And so, with my son, like now when he comes out and plays, and he doesn't play, very much right now, he's getting ready for college and doing a lot of other things. But like now we work on really just, it's fun,
Yeah.
right? And when we find those moments where we're just having fun and we can just be, free on the court, like those are special, right? For us. And same thing, like we go out and do that, here locally, and it's crazy some of the shots and the points and the everything else that we get. And honestly, right,
Yeah.
it's better when we're not feeling that pressure of being so worried about each other. And so, yeah, I think it's awesome that you guys have figured out something that works for you. And I just think you know that's
It's
amazing,
willing
and
it's
that's
willing
great.
to it's like willing to communicate, as you just mentioned, and then
Hmm.
also understanding that like everybody listening, right? And us, like we love the sport of pickleball. We're going to be
Right.
waking up tomorrow and playing it anyways. So
Right.
it's like, why not enjoy playing it together? I think that's always the thing that like brings the presence back is
Hmm.
this is high quality time with the people that you love, playing a sport that you both love. Why not enjoy it?
Yeah, and you can support each other, right? You
Yeah.
can like hopefully you can get to um that comfort and trust level where later you can say, hey, like I think we need to work on our cross court thinking or whatever, right?
Mm.
Without it being like, oh, are you putting me down, right? It's like, so that's like, again, the ideal of like, no, I want us to be successful together,
Yep.
right? And so let's get out there together and work on this, and let's work, as a relationship. Now we have something that we can both learn and do and grow, and so I think it can be a really good thing. It just takes some work on the front end to get past some of the initial feelings and pressure, and like, oh, when he said stop returning it so hard or whatever, like, is he putting me down, or is he trying to, like, which you're not, right? Like, you're really
Yeah.
trying to be like, let's do better so we can be better as a team. But it's tricky for that not to come off sometimes like I'm being put, we just get more sensitive.
I think we all, egos creep in and you got to remind yourself to tuck it aside in order to learn, right?
Right.
Moving into kind of this next chapter, this next thing that you've tackled is
Hmm.
this massive indoor pickleball facility that
Yes.
you are an owner of, which is the Flying Pickle right across the
Yes.
sweatshirt. So, what made you decide that, along with your pro pickleball career and all the success that you have, the many medals that you've had,
Mhm.
what made me say, you know what, we're gonna open the biggest pickleball facility in Idaho and call it the Flying Pickle?
I mean, we need it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, the community needed it. There was a demand for it, and and just looking at the future, and I mean, it is a business, but just thinking for myself, like, where am I going to land?
Yeah.
Once I'm no longer competing. Um, but the opportunity, like, we'd been looking for a while and brainstorming and talking about it, and then the opportunity kind of fell into our laps. So me and Nick Peterson, who's one of our other kind of pros in the area, um, met up with, we kind of researched him. We saw this guy asking a question on Facebook forum about opening a club in Boise, and had all this like survey, and we're like, this guy seems legit, right? So we had to like figure out who this person was and ask friends who knew his dad, and like, so we finally tracked him down, and ended up meeting him for breakfast, and realize, like, okay, like, this is it, like,
Yeah.
so it's just amazing sometimes how um things fall into your lap, and the right pieces come together. And I also think, though, that's where building your brand can help you in the long run, or help players in the long run, because these kind of opportunities aren't going to happen if you haven't laid out some groundwork already of
Mm.
who you are and what you're about. And so, meeting with Paul, who's our majority owner, he knew everything about running a business. which we did not know. We knew everything about pickleball. And so, and he really didn't know anything about pickleball. And so it was a match made in heaven. We all got along and respected each other and respect each other still. And so it just was like, let's do this. And it's been a huge undertaking, right? It's definitely more complex than I think a lot of people think.
Mm.
Opening up a club from scratch. Um, some ups and downs, but we're super proud of what we've done, and we're expanding. And one of the biggest things that, again, I think is probably one more of my successes is that we just have a great community behind us.
Yeah.
And so that's probably been what has really helped us. We've been open not even a year and a half, and we're full pretty much all day long. You can barely get a court. We've got a wait list for memberships, and we're opening up a second club just like 15 minutes away because we need more courts. And so but it's not you know it's not me, it's the
Yeah.
community that we have, um, that wants this and that supports this. But some of that does come from the amount of time and effort that I have put into the Boise pickleball community, and trying to be a good representative, and um, how you treat people, and from
Let me
the
let me ask
beginners to the 5-0s.
let me ask you this, kind of pulling this conversation full circle.
Mhm.
Do you believe that the Flying Pickle would be as successful as it is today if you didn't spend all this time building your personal brand within your competitive pickleball career?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think the need was there regardless.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but I do think that me being part of the project and helped to give it some validity.
Mm.
Um, and I think there is a trust element of, well, Susanna's a real pickleball player, and she coaches a lot of us, and she's at the parks. We see her all the time practicing and drilling, and you know so I think that definitely helped to, because we do have a competitor who opened literally 2 months after us,
Yeah.
which is where it is everywhere, right? There's clubs
Yeah.
going up everywhere. Um, but I think, there was definitely, some element to that. And I still spend a lot of time at the club, right? I mean, it is my home away from home, and we have an amazing staff, and we put a lot of effort into our core values of treating our players well, providing a lot of opportunities for them. We have incredible coaches, and and so it's not just my name, but it's
Yeah.
also just the amount of work that we put into making it, hopefully, one of the best experiences for pickleball players.
I think it's pretty prevalent for anybody listening. I kind of encourage them to go follow you. You dive deep into the weeds of really developing your pickleball skills as a whole. Very, very detailed on a lot of your analysis, which I love. Um, One of those I at least want to emphasize, and then we'll kind of jump back into a couple of these challenges that you may have had with actually opening a pickleball facility. But one of those emphases was footwork. You've been talking about that a pretty good bit
Mhm.
recently. Um, and it seems like it's a core pillar that's often overlooked, even when you're starting at an entry level, beginner level as your pickleball career develops.
Mhm.
So, when it comes to footwork, what is the most overlooked component of it that anybody listening can go and integrate today or even start practicing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part of footwork, what I always, when I'm teaching players about footwork is I want them to think, you know how you like to hit the ball, right?
Okay.
Like I know how I'm going to hit my best dink, but my opponents aren't going to give me that ball.
Mm.
So the only way for me to get the ball that I want is to move my feet. It's as
Mm.
simple as that, right? So if I don't move my feet, now I'm just hitting not as great of a ball as I'd like to hit, and I'm more letting my opponents dictate what's happening, right? So it's like
Yeah.
trying to teach people or get people to commit to how important it is and why, right? Because I think if you just tell them to do it, but they don't understand the reasoning behind it, right? It's easier for them to let it slip. But if they understand, like, oh, like if I actually move my feet, now I've opened up a world of opportunities for what shot I want to hit. Right. So I get to be in control of my own game. So that's the first thing for them to understand. Right. And then obviously you're going to have to teach them, like, help them understand, like, okay, how do I hit my best drop shot or my best dink or whatever it might be. But the other thing that's kind of easy for players to pick up on that a lot of times they don't know until somebody tells them is that if we take a step in the direction that we have hit the ball, so we say, follow your ball.
Okay.
Now you've actually moved, ideally before your opponent even hit the ball, into a position where your opponents are more likely to go.
Gotcha.
So when we watch pros, we it looks to us as though they're already there,
Mm.
right? Like it's like they're already in position. Like how do they know where the ball's going? And it's because we've already anticipated, where our opponents are going to hit this ball. I mean, if we can anticipate that right, we're going to move there before they even hit it.
Mm.
Right? And force our opponents to hit a harder shot. So, so that's where again that footwork comes into play. So it's twofold. One, put yourself in a better position so you can choose the shot you want to hit. Right? We talk about being deceptive with our shots. We talk about increasing higher risk speed ups, controlling our dinks, whatever it is, right? If you want to be able to hit those shots well, you need to put yourself in that position to be able to hit them. And then two is now we can also anticipate and force our opponents to have to hit harder balls if we move to their easiest spots to hit.
Mm.
Right. So, I mean, that's getting a little like more strategic than just simply like, we got to move so that we're balanced and we're whatever. But, those are the reasonings behind it. And that's going to, what's going to elevate your game even further is that, by increasing our footwork, we're overall increasing our opportunities to control this game. So yeah, so follow your ball. If you hit it, if you hit it cross court to the corner, take that step towards that middle
Yeah.
because that's the easiest shot for them to go is back towards that middle. Force them to hit it out wide again, right? So,
Is the kind of the addition to that, if I'm thinking through this as you're talking about like following the ball,
mhm.
is if I'm following my ball, it's then getting myself on balance to receive the ball before it's actually hit. Is that like the
Yeah.
second step of that?
So I also always talk about there's a pattern, a footwork pattern.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Mm.
and what it is we should not be moving. We should be nice and balanced when we hit the ball, when our opponents hit the ball, when our partner hits the ball. So anytime anybody's actually hitting the ball, we should be balanced, right? Because we want to be focusing on our shot or we want to be in our ready position watching what our opponents are doing, right?
Yeah.
Watching their paddle to see what kind of shot they're going to hit. Okay. So as soon as that ball is in the air, though, we should be moving. And it can be as simple as just getting back onto the balls of your feet. It could be a split step, depending on your athleticism, your background. But whatever it is, after we have finished our shot, we should be moving. And then when they get ready to hit, we should be stopped. And then when they hit, we got to move again because now we got to react, right? And get there. So that's the pattern. Anybody's hitting it, don't move. The ball's in the air, you're moving. Think about coming up from the baseline on a third shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're hitting a third shot and we hit a slow drop.
Okay.
That's going to give us more time to get forward because everybody knows you're supposed to stop before they hit the ball, right? So the longer the ball is in the air, the more time we have to move. If we hit a drive, which both shots have benefits, right? There's
Yeah.
benefits to drops, there are benefits to drives. If we hit a drive, we do not have as much time to move because it's not in the air as long before we need to stop while our opponents hit.
The I'm just literally thinking in my brain the stuff that I've been working on recently and all of that I'm going to take the court this afternoon is
Mm-hmm.
because when we talked about intentions earlier, like my recent intention on the court has been all footwork related, like
Mm-hmm.
all of it. Um, so I'm going to have to get back to you on applying the second component of that, which is when anybody's taking a shot on the court, making sure I'm unbalanced. Then there's absolutely times when like my opponent's about my partner's about to take a shot and I'm so antsy to want to like poach or catch the
Uh-huh.
our opponents off guard that I'm in motion and then the
Mm-hmm.
ball gets put behind you, you're making a move
Right.
too early, so I could
Yeah.
totally see that.
I mean,
The
that's my
second
favorite spot
Yeah,
is if I'm hitting and I see them start to anticipate, like they're anticipating, they've
you're
anticipated.
intentionally waiting for me to do that.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna sit there and wait and hold it till the last second to see if you
Yeah,
decide to shift one way or the other. And
yeah,
then I'm definitely going the other direction, right? So because yeah, you're like, I think they're gonna go here, I think they're gonna go there. Now you're just guessing,
yeah,
right? And if we can wait long enough to see that guess happen and you start to move, it's too hard to change your momentum to go back, right? So,
yeah.
so the better the players are, the longer they're going to wait to hit their shot, right? Because they're
Oh
waiting
yeah,
to see it for
I've
sure.
been caught many times. I
Yes.
have been caught many times.
Yeah, and so you have
This
to so if you can anticipate off of your own shot where you think they're going to go and then wait to see if they actually do what you anticipated or if they go for that higher risk shot that you left open and now go get that ball. Like that's going to help,
Yeah.
your timing.
You also talked about that the reason that I was piecing it together and you saw my wheels turning was that you talked about like that floaty drop.
Mhm.
So I've kind of phrased this as like being able to like walk in a drop
Mhm.
now and kind of like follow the ball in. I used to be big like a big roll every drop guy. Like try
Mhm.
and get it to dip. Um and I've now kind of moved on like for special situations where it's more applicable. Maybe like they're late coming in, I want to try and roll it at their feet, etc.
Sure.
But if I'm coming in on a floating drop, I can almost like just walk in with the ball. And by the time the ball lands, I'm like already at the kitchen and they can't do
Right.
much with it because I'm standing right in front of them.
Right.
And me, it took me like a session of just like doing that for like,
Mhm.
I can't believe I've overlooked this all this time. Like
Right.
rather than like hitting a rolling drop from the baseline and being on my back leg and leaving all this space, now I
Right.
just like kind of chip, hit a floating drop, walk it in, and I'm already
Mhm.
there. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is an easy game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And some of it, like you said, it's all situational, right? And some of it's
Yeah,
going to depend on your partners and things like that, right? Like so I do hit an aggressive roll drop the majority of the time.
yeah.
But for me, I would say with my game style, and most of my opponents know this as well, I'm more trying to set up my partners to poach,
Mm,
right? So they trust my drop enough that they're already halfway up before I even hit it half the time,
yeah,
right? So I'm going to add that pace to hopefully get more errors and then that pressure of them crashing, right? But if I was trying to do it to myself, absolutely right, I'm not going to get very far up the court
yeah.
before I have to hit another drop at this stage. Um,
Yeah, and me
yeah,
hitting a
so
drop, me hitting a roll drop and leaving it high, you know, a little
yeah,
way more than you probably. I'm getting my partner smoked on the
right.
sides,
Yeah, there's always
and
a
they're
risk,
creeping up.
right? Risk reward, to pickleball.
So I want to close with kind of finishing this entrepreneurship leg.
Mhm.
The first piece that I want to kind of like ask is, was this your first kind of like go at a business as a whole that you're an owner of, or did you dabble in anything before that?
No, this is definitely my first go besides just kind of owning my own coaching business, right? When traveling
Yeah,
around and coaching and building, building your clients and all of that. But 100%. And it's, I've learned a lot. There's still a lot that, I'm super thankful that we have Paul, who, deals with, the loans and the finances and, um, who all to hire. But
Did you have any doubts going into it?
um, no, no,
Okay.
no doubts going into it. I think, more going forward, and it's not even doubts, but it's just kind of the ongoing, like, how do we continue to make this successful?
Mm.
Um, is definitely a more pressing thought. And then we're always, we are expanding into franchising. And then even just looking at, I think the thing that people uh, miss potentially with like pickleball clubs is how do you keep it fresh, how do you keep it relevant, what other areas can you be getting income in. um, so I think there's just always some trial and error that's going on, that we're trying things and seeing what works, what doesn't work. We've kind of veered a little bit on my side, which is more the pickleball programming and instruction side, into some of the online area,
Okay.
and really working on kind of our YouTube.
I've
Um,
seen it.
and yeah, and so which
Love
is, I think, both, you know great for our instructors, for myself, and then also just kind of building the Flying Pickle as a brand as a whole. um and
catchy.
then yeah, and then from there, we're looking into building more of an online coaching aspect. So there's always more, right? That I think that's the interesting part. Like, you think you're done, you think, okay, we've got this awesome club,
Yeah.
we've got full members, um, but
What's next, as you said
yeah,
earlier?
always more. And so yeah, I
What
mean, definitely, I think the things like that I didn't really understand, which luckily, like, I would say Paul's more of that mentor on the business side.
Mm,
uh, was like, when the competitor was coming in at the same time as us, and you're going, oh my gosh, like, how's this, are we making the wrong decision? Like, that was probably the
yeah.
biggest thing that had me worried. But he's like, there's always going to be competitors, you just have to do better than them. Like, we have to be better than that. It's just like a pickleball game, right? You've got a
Yeah.
competitor, you got
That's
to
a
play
great
better.
reference.
And so, it was kind of like, okay, like,
I
we're
love
just
that
going to do
actually.
this better. um
What
and
was like
and
what was the
yeah.
thing you tried that you were kind of surprised on how well it worked? Like going through this trial and error process, was there anything that you tried and you're like, huh, that actually worked a lot better than I anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was shocked, like, on the programming side, of how well leagues have been embraced.
Okay.
Because we never had leagues because we didn't have any place to play them,
Yeah.
right? Before, because we were, you're at parks and sharing courts and whatever.
Mm,
Um, and so I think that, like, was shocking to me, that, like, people just love them and eat them up, and they cannot wait for the next league. And so I had no idea, on that. And then I would say on, um, kind of the other side of things, like, our pro shop has been, incredibly successful. And
huh.
um, and just,
What about it?
well, I mean, again, like, that to me, again, I've never had a store, right? So I just
Yeah.
was like, I don't know, I go to Amazon or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, but just, again, like, there's so much nuance involved there, of like how we incentivize, or how we encourage our instructors to, like, be super aware of when somebody's, like, needing a new paddle or needing new shoes
Mm,
or grips, and the customer service side of everything. And how important it is to bring in new people into the club. So we, like, do learn to plays with certified instructors that are literally $10. That's it, right?
huh.
And then they get a gift certificate for the pro shop, or a coupon or whatever. And so just doing all those kind of customer loyalty things, and just how much, having that community, they want to support you.
Yeah.
right? If you treat people well and then they're going to support you back. And so I think I was a little shocked at just like how successful, that side of things really can be in a business, right? I'm going into it thinking about tournaments and lessons and, clinics and things like that, and not realizing like, there's so many other parts of a club that help make it an entire company.
How about the food aspect? Because you guys
Yeah.
have a unique individual that is behind the kitchen there. So what made you
Yeah.
guys do that and even bring him in?
Yeah, so we do have a restaurant and a bar. And that was also that actually that's a really good one because I was
Yeah.
probably pretty scared about that part of it.
Yeah.
Um, because, I was like, I just don't know how much, people are gonna want to spend money and time and you know, and it's been way more successful than I would have thought. Because I've been to a lot of indoor clubs, and I've been to a couple that closed down their like deli restaurant area
Yeah.
because they just weren't getting the use of it. But we have a great chef, and that's people make the difference a lot of times, right? Like you got to get the
Absolutely.
right people. And so he actually was on the first season of Hell's Kitchen. So that's always kind of
Super
our
cool.
funny little story. And now he's working in the kitchen. That's the name of the restaurant. And and he's passionate, right? Like he cares about it. He wants people to like his food. He's always offering specials. He's promoting it. We try to tie it in with events. Like we have a big kind of pro tournament, 1 day triple elimination tournament happening Saturday.
Okay.
So you
That's
talk about a
unique.
lot of pickleball, right? Somebody
Yeah.
was calculating it. It was going to be like 250 matches or something. And the winner at the end of the day have probably played 20 matches or something crazy like that.
Wow. Marathon.
It's a marathon. It's a marathon. It's old school. But
That's unique, actually.
yeah, it's super fun, right? And we've got pros
Yeah.
coming from Utah, Washington State, regional people coming to play in it. And it's our second year, so some of the people are coming back again because they just knew like this is a kind of cool thing. But we work with our kitchen on that. So he's putting together a special to get people to come in and watch and buy some food, right? And so it's just I think what surprised me to some degree, surprised me the most, or something I've learned the most, is probably very similar to what I said my first fail was. Where
Yeah.
like I'm thinking if I just go out on the pickleball court and I beat someone, that should be enough, right? And I'm thinking like we build a cool club with courts. People should just want to come play pickleball. That should be enough. And
Yeah.
it's like, nope, that is not enough. There are so many more aspects that go into being successful. Um, and so, having that cooperation between the kitchen and the programming and making it a whole experience, not just for the players, but for our community to come and get to watch and share a pitcher of beer. Um, all of those things, it's definitely to be successful, it's bigger than just putting up a building.
Absolutely. And I think the emphasis on that is, and we've talked to a couple other people too, is just like a lot of the oh, I will say a lot of pickleball facilities are struggling all across the country for a miscellaneous amount of reasons, but it sounds like the summary that is pretty consistent is finding ways to have the players actually interact more and more with your community and how you can keep on doing that.
Yes.
And the backtrack and the key component of that you emphasized there was like first establishing what those community values are and then how you want those people to actually consistently be a part and know what those values are and align with those values because that's really what a true community is right, a group of individuals that share similar values
Hmm.
and similar wants. So you guys are doing an incredible job on over there. And I've loved it. Your YouTube channel has been great. So I love what you guys are doing. I'm excited to see what you guys come out in the education half too, even more so. So we have two closing questions on the podcast now. I know I
Okay.
gave you one up front that was challenging, but we have two that we close with still today. I'm going to give you the first one. So the first one is, what is your greatest fear moving forward?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I am definitely a planner. Um, and I would say, uh, you can look at all the psychology of your upbringing and the struggles you had, uh, growing up and through life. And so it's always hard to eliminate those fears. So I would say my biggest fear is just, being on the older side of things and being secure in retirement and finances. And I get a little bit, um, probably a little uh, too concerned sometimes with that stuff, and just the economy in general and things like that. Um, I mean, but then I tell myself like it's silly. We have so many skills and opportunities, and I'm the type of person that if the flying pickle failed, there's other things I can be doing.
Yeah.
But it's hard to. And then I would say on the pickleball side, um, I think uh, my biggest fear is how will I, and even now in some degrees, gracefully handle not winning as much as I'd like to.
Mm,
So, I mean, that's kind of a deep fear and something I think about because, it happens to everybody
yeah.
and time catches up with us. And, I've had people I know who, you know, are in their 50s and 60s and they still want to think that they can play with the 30-year-olds, and in their heads they think they can. And so seeing that up close, I think, has at least allowed me to logically think through that
Mm,
process and understand that it is going to happen. But I think it's a fear of mine of how do I actually handle that, um, mentally and emotionally and everything else when that really becomes much more of a legitimate thing.
yeah. I mean, I think it's the same correlation of like having that fear of injury.
Yeah,
Um, right? And it's just the fact of like, how are you going to handle this chapter when it's closed?
right.
And I think that the best way I try and summarize it myself too, and I'll see if you align with this, is just doing it without any regret. It's like giving my full effort at the end of the day so that I can reflect
Hmm.
on it and say, you know what, I gave it everything that I had.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I know. I just read something someone wrote to me, and it was about the the desire to thrive,
Mm,
right? Rather than just the desire to strive to do well. It's like, no, I've got this desire to thrive,
yeah,
right? And give it all, like you said. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. This last one is kind of aligned with what we're talking about right now, which I love. And that is when this is all said and done, and someone may be writing a book on Susanna Barr, reflecting on her career, her journey,
Hmm.
on the entrepreneurship half, the player half, that very last chapter in the book. What would you want it to say?
Ooh. I mean, I think that last chapter of the book, I would like it to focus less on my personal achievements and more on, uh, I guess, still an achievement, but more on what I have done for the growth of pickleball as a whole, and in my communities, and not just in Boise, because I coach and do clinics all around the country and the world, and just what did I meaningfully, or not even knowing, give to other people coming into the sport, to their communities. So I would definitely want that last chapter to be a little bit more about, you know hopefully, how I've maybe touched other people's lives in positive ways.
I think that's such a great perspective to give our audience, is just because when you kind of get lost in the competitiveness of pickleball and that one game you may have lost to the two, it gives you that zoom out look that it's just like so much more than pickleball, right?
Hmm.
It really ends with those relationships, that human connection, that
Hmm.
impact that you're leaving at the end of the day when you're laying there, at 85 and you're like, hey, did I do everything that I wanted to do? And did I leave an
Right.
impact on the way? And therefore,
Right.
you can really move on to your next chapter with a big old smile on your face. So I love that you gave that perspective to our entire audience. This is awesome.
Yes.
Um, but I wanted to thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Of
I
course. Thank you for
think,
having me.
yeah, just from, your experience, not only on the court, but off of it now, is
Hmm.
so relatable to so much of our audience. And being so candid, even with some of your blogs. So I encourage people to go and read those. Being super candid about some of your struggles that you've had mentally,
Hmm.
physically on the court, battling back from those.
Hmm.
It's awesome stuff. And I think that there's not enough of that unfilteredness yet in pickleball. I think it's getting there. It's absolutely
Hmm.
getting there. But I think there's just so much demand because everybody's playing the sport to have that candid transparency. And you're really doing that. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I'll say one thing was like,
Yeah.
I view myself as myself, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like I'm just a normal person
Yeah.
who had, a whole bunch of different life experiences before finding pickleball and being fortunate enough to have some skills and the mindset and to work hard to get to where I'm at. But at the end of the day, like I'm still like kind of this little bit awkward, goofy person, right? And then I meet people, and like, especially after I started writing my blog, who'll be like, "Oh my gosh, like I really had no idea who you were. I was like intimidated." And I'm like, "Really? From me? Like like you can come up to talk to me anytime you want. Like I don't know. Like I'm still just like the same person I was, before pickleball."
Yeah.
And so I think that's been to me the kind of one of the most eye-opening things of like, when you talk about, okay, I do have more of an influence than maybe I realized, and kind of allowing people to see a little bit more who I think it's pretty obvious, but maybe it's not because it's just in my head. I know who I am, and so to be able
Yeah.
to share that, with other people who don't always, who are looking at you from their own perspectives, right? And not really knowing everything that you've had to put into it or go through or are dealing with still. And so yeah, so I think it's been good for myself as well. Like it's just been kind of eye opening for myself, to just share a little bit more about my story and who I am. And so appreciate you having me out here.
Yeah. So for everybody that is listening that totally wants more of Susanna Barr, what's the easiest way to find you or even reach you or even go to one of your clinics?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is probably, where I post first. And, if you message me on Instagram, it is me who responds. And I usually do, unless it's, something weird. Don't message me weird things, guys. Unless it's like funny weird. If it's funny weird, I might respond to that. But
Oh my God, that's awesome.
um and then if I do have a blog on Substack, which is a pretty cool writing forum, that I just recently found. And then our YouTube channel is the Flying Pickle Academy. um as far as clinics, I come to Boise anytime you want, and you pretty much can get me. I just gave a lesson to a lady from Hawaii this morning, so it's fun, right?
So
but
that's a
uh
long
but
ways.
yeah, well, she was here for family, she didn't come
Gotcha.
just to see me. um but other clinics, just for people who want to know, because people do ask. Typically people reach out to me and invite me, and if
Gotcha.
you invite me to come teach some clinics and it works in my schedule, I'm typically more than happy, to get out there. I'm heading back out to West Virginia for the second year this summer, because it's such a
Hell
great
yeah.
community who's invited us out there to coach and play in their tournament. So
Well, thank you, Susanna.